Day 3 overview of everything I found in the Epstein Files. Content warning. The harvesting of Mormon blood as some sort of weekly payment system for select breeders, creation of transhuman sex slaves by biologically turning men into women and women into men through hormonal and biological intervention, using different formulas across the gender spectrum in order to cater to different tastes and sexual appetites. The apparent war between Jews and non-Jews that apparently the Jews are currently winning, the identity of codename Mr. Evil, who is allegedly Ehud Barak, the former Prime Minister of Israel, Epstein meeting with Netanyahu, details about the debaucherous sex parties, including individuals having their backs and legs cut open and then performing sex while others eat intestines and cannibalize children. At these events, the names dropped were George Soros, H.W. Bush, and Henry Kissinger. The dressing up of young children into different Disney characters and then being sold to specific clients. William Barr, ex-attorney U.S. General, apparently frequenting these sex parties where Epstein would abduct and then sexually abuse victims. The disclosure that quantum computing technology is 3 billion times better than their Illuminati magic in a very heated email exchange between two individuals. An odd email chain where Mary Kennedy was found dead in her backyard, where Epstein replied, "Whoops." A person named Pizza Monster with frequent references to how much he loved the taste of pizza and just craved pizza. This figure is currently unidentified. Trafficking of young homeless people, turning them into extreme sexual deviants through consistent ritualistic and sexual abuse, then later pawning them off, putting them into certain positions of influence, power, or work is heavily implied. Jeffrey Epstein's connection to the Rothschilds being paid to the tune of $25 million. And last but not least, Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell's father, apparently turning on Mossad, demanding hundreds of millions of dollars because he has so much control over the United States, naming himself Israel's unofficial ambassador to the Soviet bloc. And then as a surprise to nobody, he was found dead. Honorable mentions are possible time travel, transhumanism experiments, and the bloodline of the literal Illuminati being listed out. But all three of those need to be deeper looked into because they have almost no evidence surrounding them that I've found yet. In my next video, I'm going to be cross-referencing a lot of the stuff that I'm finding with other sources to try to pin down which of this stuff is more true and follow to keep up as I continue to dig through these files.
The most important thing to come out of the Epstein Files is that Americans have finally come to realize something that the rest of the world has always known, which is that we are truly not free. The Epstein Files is not conspiracy. The U.S. Department of Justice have published these files, 3.5 million documents to be exact, with incriminating evidence of the whole U.S. oligarchy doing the most disturbing and disgusting things to an underage group of people. Do you understand? And where is the outrage? Where are people protesting? Where's the calls for impeachment? Where's the call for U.S. regime change here? There's none. And that's mainly because Americans have finally come to accept that they are not free. What are we going to protest? And to protest, we have to get permits from the city just to have permission to protest against them. This is one of the many things that are found in the Epstein Files. A woman accuses Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas of blank her when she was 4 or 5 years old in a church. The Epstein Files literally name all of the U.S. oligarchy, from Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Trump, tech giants like Elon Musk and Bill Gates, Supreme Court justices like Clarence Thomas. I mean, it goes on and on. Hollywood actors and actresses and directors and financiers and Wall Street, the list goes on. And the fact that people have become so hopeless and helpless is a reflection of people realizing that they are not free, that there is nothing that we can do to bring this regime down. What set America apart from the rest of the world was always our Constitution. The freedom of speech, the freedom to bear arms, the freedom to protest, etc. Except now people are realizing that that is all an illusion. People used to say, well, at least we can make fun of the government. At least we can make fun of the president. Well, is that still true? Trump threatens to sue Trevor Noah over Epstein joke at the Grammys. When people begin to feel this helpless and hopeless, and they start to realize that they can't punch up, they start to punch down. They start to punch across. And that's exactly what's happening in this country, is that we are on the brink of civil war. People are fighting each other. And that's not just happening in the United States. It's happening in Italy, in the UK, in France. It's happening across the entire Western world. People are realizing that they're not free, especially in the West, and that's waking them the fuck up. But this is also the beginning of a massive collective awakening that we are long overdue for.
The Epstein Files just keep getting stranger. In these emails, he discusses giving people supernatural abilities through psychological stress, cloning people, and even designer babies, whatever that's supposed to mean. Let's start at the bottom here. This person named Gino Yu emails Epstein. He says, I'm in Paris and was about to write you and it popped up. She's a classic stage 3 in the model. Outlier who is intelligent, was traumatized when she was young, SA, and now gradually coming into her own and becoming self-realized. Starting to develop special abilities. This trip, we found a lot more stories like this, though she is more on the extreme side given her biographical history. Epstein responds asking what prompted his email. Then this guy goes on to say the caravan trip has been really wonderful in meeting people that are stage 3. These are people who are developing a different perspective of reality and discovering the gifts they have. He goes on to say, I understand that you were not happy with the results of the Cuba conference that you funded, but I feel like the work is very important toward helping people identify and recognize the gifts that they have, which may not be accepted or well understood by society today. He concludes saying new models are also possible, such as the alternative paradigms group are finding their way, new forms of knowing without knowing how one knows. And in this one, somebody named Brian Bishop emailed Epstein saying, attached is the document you requested. It's the use of funds spreadsheet for the designer baby and human cloning company. This gets us out of the self-funded garage biology phase and the first live birth of a human designer baby and possibility of a human clone within 5 years. I pulled these emails directly from the DOJ's website. They are 100% legitimate. This kind of reminds me of government projects like MK Ultra, for example, but they're not the exact same. However, the framework is kind of similar. Trauma, altered states of consciousness, reframing somebody's identity, and pushing the limits of what we think is possible.
So you've not had a chance to read the 3 million Epstein File documents released over the weekend, but you don't want to look like a thicky dum-dum in front of all your mates. Here's a quick rundown on what the files tell us and what they mean. Now, you'll remember that the Epstein Files were ordered to be released on the 19th of December last year, but they've only just been released now, 6 weeks late. That's because it takes a long time to redact all of the names of the rich and powerful men who abused underage girls that the billionaire financier Jeffrey Epstein trafficked over the years. It didn't take a long time to redact all of the names of the underage girls who were abused by Epstein, though, because a lot of the time their information just wasn't redacted. Now, these documents were ultimately released because Congress voted through the Epstein Files Transparency Act back in December, which is something Donald Trump said he was totally fine with, which is why he spent the last 6 weeks invading Venezuela and trying to destabilise the entire geopolitical order by threatening to invade Greenland in the hope that the world ends before we get our beady little eyes on his name in the files, which of course appears hundreds of times. But the US Justice Department wanted to make it very clear when they released these documents that the allegations against Trump contain untrue and sensationalist claims against President Trump that were submitted to the FBI right before the 2020 election. A 2020 election that Pam Bondi, who heads up the Justice Department, couldn't bring herself to say wasn't stolen.
President Biden is the President of the United States.
The artist formerly known as Prince Andrew achieved the impossible by coming out of the weekend with his reputation somehow harmed even more. I mean, honestly, this guy should be studied in a lab. Who knows what other things we previously thought humanly impossible he might be able to do, like surviving in space with no oxygen. I think we should send him up there to try, don't you? You see, these pictures of Andrew lying over a girl who he'll no doubt try to convince us was a burglar he just apprehended were released over the weekend, along with emails showing that he'd remained in contact with Jeffrey Epstein after he'd been convicted of soliciting a minor in 2008. So basically, this was the main takeaway from the latest document release, because all of the people we previously knew were connected to Epstein have been saying over the last few years that they cut off ties with him after he was convicted for being a pedo in 2008. But these documents in fact reveal that they all continued to have contact with him. Like Elon Musk, who sent multiple emails in 2012 asking Epstein what day/night will be your wildest party on Epstein Island. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, even sent Epstein an email calling him a legend and saying that she was so proud of him while he was under house arrest for sleeping with kids. The recent files also reveal that Jeffrey Epstein was about to cooperate with the law and tell on all of the rich and powerful people he'd hosted on his island over the years. Then he mysteriously died. And if that seems fishy, the Deputy US Attorney General Todd Blanche added a fucking king-size tuna into the mix over the weekend, as he's come out and said that the Epstein case is now over, even though his department has kept hold of 2.5 million documents. Oh, and by the way, in case you're tempted to believe that Donald Trump's association with Jeffrey Epstein ended 20 years ago, as he says, here's a picture of Brett Ratner, the director of Melania Trump's recent documentary, which is in cinemas now.
Wait, hold on. Did y'all hear that? Epstein said, he ain't want no black women on Epstein Island. He said, I don't want no Niggers, right? And in his other emails, he made it clear that he thinks black people, as a whole, black people are ignorant and idiotic. And he doesn't want to be around them. We good. Boy, rejection is protection, ain't it? Shit. Because whenever those Epstein photos come out, you know what they're looking for, right? You know what people really looking for? They're looking for black folks. They don't care. They know this thing is riddled with white folks, right? Whenever the Epstein photos come out, they only looking for one thing and one thing only. Black folks. But my thing is this, right? A worldwide child ex-trafficker into all kind of nefarious things, all kind of craziness, demon worship, all these little weird things, right? All these weird projects he got going on, right? And they still got black folks on their mind somehow.
Babies were killed and eaten. Young girls were forcefully impregnated and forced to give birth to Jeffrey's children as part of a crazy eugenics scheme. There are victims buried on Donald Trump's golf course. Trump, Bill Clinton, and Bill Gates were all involved. Elon Musk was begging to go to those parties, and I'm sure I got the chance to attend one at some point. If this is what the DOJ was willing to release, and there's millions of more files that haven't been released, just imagine what is not being told. The allegations within these files are some of the most heinous, horrendous things a human being could possibly do. And they are committed by the most powerful and protected people within our society. And I could not give less of a fuck who did or did not do what. They were all in on it. They all knew about it. They were complicit, regardless of who fucking did what. And they're protected. They're protected. There's a sickness, a vile sickness in our country and our democracy, and there needs to be change and accountability.
Remember y'all was calling conspiracy theorists crazy when we was right the whole time? Now your ass is mad about the Epstein Files is coming out because you have a veneration and a credence for your favorite world leader, celebrity, and politician. So what you gotta understand is that the great majority of these people are devils who practice Canaanite culture. So when it comes to conspiracy theorists, we read patterns and we read energy. So we're not crazy, we were just early. See, we're in the age of information, so the truth is gonna come out regardless. And for the people who are stuck in religion, one thing you gotta understand about the political apparatus, the Antichrist that you speak about in your Bible is not gonna be somebody who works at fucking McDonald's. It's gonna be somebody who has political or celebrity influence. So why should you put your trust in these people? That doesn't even make sense. That's like multiplying any number by zero. At this moment of time, if you don't understand what's going on, I can't explain nothing more advanced than the weather to you. Because when you go to Job chapter 9, verse 24, it says that the world be given to the hands of the wicked. And who is the wicked? The people who control religion, the people who control politics, and the people who control Hollywood. So why are you surprised about the Epstein Files? You move different when you know the truth. So when it comes to the chosen ones, we don't argue with people who are asleep. We just move in silence as the world collapses. So at this moment of time, if you're still showing credence and veneration to these politicians, celebrities, and these pastors, you're just retarded.
Unfortunately, Kanye did in fact call Pusha T and Jay-Z showing up in the Epstein Files. Before I get into this, all of this is alleged. Everything in this video can be sourced on the DLJ website at the time of me recording. Take this screenshot of the DLJ website when you look at the files as your trigger warning. With that out the way, we have a 2-page document courtesy of the FBI surrounding a report made in 2019. The person who called in the tip, whose name is redacted, starts off by speaking to being trafficked by Epstein at parties back in the early to mid 90s. The victim then goes into an account of being abducted in 1996 and waking up to, mind you, this is where I quote the tip verbatim, the presence of Harvey Weinstein and Sean Carter, aka Jay-Z, while Weinstein had inserted his fingers into redacted. The quote goes on to say he believed he was in Epstein's mansion in Florida. Second page of the tip is where Pusha T comes into frame. The caller alleges that Pusha T was in fact one of her handlers alongside Harvey Weinstein back in 2007, which to me on the surface does sound insane. Like I am still finding it hard to believe that Pusha Pusha T was trapping with Epstein a year after Hell Hath No Fury dropped. Flip side, his brother Malice did leave that life behind to become a pastor, and it's not really significant, but we also saw Mace do the same thing off the strength of being around Diddy. I still want to make it abundantly clear that even me being able to make a logical connection does not prove that any of this is legit. One thing worth noting for the sake of really just covering this specific document is that a New York finance executive named Leon Black and former, but at the time current, Attorney General William Barr were also mentioned as being present during some of the cases of abuse. That's not related to Jay-Z or Pusha T, but it's interesting because those aren't necessarily two names you just drop. Like, there are names that have been floating around that someone not in their right mind or someone making a report in bad faith might be assumed to mention, like Jay-Z, the Clintons, Elon Musk even. And not that I 100% believe it or believe that it's impossible, but if you think about it, all of these people have a fair amount of internet lore tied to their names that you could draw a false allegation from. But William Barr and Leon Black, not exactly at the cool kids table. Another side note, they got Weinstein for this a few years back as a part of the Me Too movement, and I very distinctly remember a good portion of the media echoing the backlash in opposition to it. It just makes me wonder if they had to throw somebody under the bus to keep the big picture under wraps. Needless to say, there are literal thousands of Epstein files out as of yesterday. More will be revealed. I will be posting any updates or findings as time goes on. Shoot me a follow to stay up to date.
Y'all know these Epstein files are nothing new, right? You do know that this is the disclosure that they were talking about with the aliens, right? You do know that most of these elites are not real human beings, right? Think about it. They've told us that there are alien species that eat human beings. That's why they're so bloodthirsty. That's why they don't have emotions like we do. We see babies, sweet infants, innocent. They don't look at it that way. It's no way a normal human being could do this. No way. And they said that the disclosure would start to leak out slowly. These files have leaked out slowly. Tell me what y'all think. This is a little too normal. It should be a lot more outrage than it is.
Files, and I'll tell you how he was mentioned. So there's an unsubstantiated report that was called into a tip line that basically said that Jay-Z, along with Harvey Weinstein and a sitting, or at the time, a sitting U.S. Attorney General, were all involved or somehow complicit in her being sexually assaulted and abducted. And she said there was a handler, and the handler was Pusha T. That was called into a tip line. The person refused to give their name. You couldn't really do no due diligence on it, but his name is there. His name comes up quite a few other times, but it's kind of also, it comes up in the sense, and I'm speaking here, kind of summing shit up. Basically, there are rich billionaires who are basically saying that Jay-Z is coddling the black Americans, the Negroes, that they're not gonna wild out no matter what we do. So essentially, there's this kind of understanding implicitly that Jay-Z is the guy to control the niggas. He's a shepherd to the niggas. So if we're gonna do something that black people are gonna be mad at, let's have Jay-Z just run interference and we're good.
Jeffrey Epstein might be dead, but it seems like his vision for the world is very much alive. Just look at this email correspondence that he had with Peter Thiel, J.D. Vance's direct mentor, about the world after Brexit. Epstein says Brexit, just the beginning, and then Thiel says, of what? And Epstein says, return to tribalism, counter to globalization, amazing new alliances. You and I both agreed zero interest rates were too high. And as I said in your office, finding things on their way to collapse was much better than finding the next bargain. Epstein and his associates knew that Brexit was bad for the UK economy, that it would send interest rates to the floor, and that it would put the UK in a situation of slow decline. And given all of their influence that we now know they had over the British government, I don't think it's a crazy thing to say that they probably engineered Brexit because they knew they could make out like bandits. And there is every indication that the UK was just a test case for what they want to implement around the world. It is a complete vindication of the shock doctrine, the theory of disaster capitalism that Marxists have speculated about for decades, And they're just saying it. That crisis is a feature, not a bug of capitalism, and that capitalists intentionally manufacture it because they know that even in situations, especially in situations of crisis, they will profit while normal people suffer. Like I said, Jeffrey Epstein himself might be gone, but we are very much still living in Epstein's world. And it's one in which a very small boys club of very wealthy people continue to get richer while the rest of us watch the world deteriorate.
I would like the news more if they didn't have the news voice. Like, I want a news anchor to see something fucked up and be like, holy shit! What the fuck was they doing to them kids? Like, that's how I want the news to be told. I don't want you to be telling me the news like, and just today, man was shot 17 times in his skull. Like, that shit weird. Like, that shit very weird. Like, I don't like the lack of humanity it be in, like, news anchors' voices. You understand? I think I would like the news more if they didn't have the news voice. Like, I want a new...